Hello everyone, RadLad here, and welcome back to yet another video. Today we once again delve back into the Metroid franchise. However, we're not talking about doors this time, because after that last video, I'm a little burned out from doors. So instead, we're going to be taking a look at all of the Metroid game's box arts. The box art of a game is incredibly important, as it's the first thing a consumer sees of a game if it's being displayed in a store. Effective box art should display the title of the game clearly, while also using the space to display imagery that should pertain to what the game is actually like, while balancing all of that with making the box art visually interesting as well, so it catches the consumer's eye. So now that we've established that, we shall look through the many box arts of the Metroid series and see how they stack up to each other. I'll be judging them based on how visually interesting they are, and how accurately they portray the game itself. And I'll make a tier list for them as well, so we can have a nice visual of how they all compare to each other. Because tier lists look nice, let's be honest. One last note is that I'm not including box arts that are nearly identical to other regions, basically box arts that just reuse the same exact art as in other regions. Not only would that be boring to go over, but it'll also make this video 10 times longer. Anyways, let's start looking at these box arts. What better place to start with than Metroid 1? The original North American box art follows the black box template that many early NES games utilized in North America. This template consisted of art of the game that almost perfectly resembles the actual in-game graphics on an all-black box. Although for some reason they changed the black and the silver for Metroid 1. No clue why they did that. Anyway, the picture depicts Samus facing off against a zoomer that is floating in midair, which is most certainly not what they do in the game. And there's also a Ripper flying nearby Samus. That one actually acts how it's supposed to. Aside from the main image, the box lets us know that Metroid is an adventure game based on the logo on the bottom left of the box. It also lets us know that this game is a password pack, which means you can type in a password to restore your progress if you turn off the console. Since, they didn't include saving, even though Zelda 1 already had that, and it came out earlier than Metroid 1 in North America, but, whatever. While the box art does accurately show what the game looks like, it's also not very visually appealing, due to sticking so close to the 8-bit style, which is why I'm putting it in pretty bad. It looks like the game, but it doesn't really show what the game is about, nor does it look all that cool. Not to mention they messed up how the zoomers actually act in the game, so it's not even accurate. Europe's box art is quite a bit different than the American one, and does a better job of showing off the game, as we now have a full illustration instead of basically just a screenshot from the game. It shows Samus standing in the middle of a long hallway, rocking her classic power suit, as it looks way different than it looks in later games. The green light on her chest plate is a lot larger, and she has a lot of bizarre black mechanical strips across the torso of her suit which are not featured in any other Metroid game. This is also in addition to her arm cannon being far skinnier than normal. There's also some weird hologram things near the bottom that depict Samus's various upgrades. Overall, this box art is just kind of average. It's alright visually, but it does do a passable job at showing what the game is like. Japan's box art consists of Samus in the air shooting a beam shot directly at the player. I guess she finally lost it or something and wants to vent her frustrations on the player. She's also on a punchy red background, which honestly gives the box a bit of a comic book feel. However, the main thing I dislike about this box art is the power suit design itself. It looks a lot more mechanical with the extra wires in the arm and the rotary parts in the chest. Honestly, the proportions of Samus here just look very off, making it less than visually appealing than it would be otherwise. It's not bad enough to go into pretty bad though, so I'll give it an average. There's actually a fourth Metroid 1 box art, but we'll get to that one later, because in order to fully understand that one, we must first take a look at Metroid 2's box art. Now this box art is really damn good. It shows Samus in her various suit for the first time ever, in a very iconic crouch pose with her arm cannon angled up, a motion in which she does very, very frequently in promotional renders for her. The design of the suit essentially served as the basis for all other suits after it. As seen in the Metroid 1 box arts, Samus' design had not yet been finalized, and it was Metroid 2 that finally gave us a concrete Samus design. and in my opinion, one of her absolute best designs. The environment around her depicts the barren surface of planet SR-388, which the game takes place in, and it's oddly beautiful in a way. This box art was so good that all three territories had effectively the same box art, with the Japanese design essentially just moving the logo to be below Samus and being slightly more zoomed out to show a little more scenery. This box art is not only very visually pleasing, but also depicts the game's simple beauty very well. Honestly, it's amazing. And that takes us right back to the fourth Metroid 1 box art. This box art was featured in the 1992 North American re-release of Metroid 1 to effectively serve as cross-promotion with Metroid 2, which is incredibly apparent because they literally just used the same Samus art that Metroid 2's box art had. I mean, sure, that means that by default this box art is instantly more visually appealing than the other three Metroid 1 box arts, but now the bigger problem lies with the fact that it doesn't accurately portray the game. The Varia suit in Metroid 1 does not have the large rounded shoulders. It just changes Samus's color palette to pink in the game, and as a result, the suit does not match up at all with what's being portrayed in the game. Not only that, but there's no interesting background with this box art, it's just a lame yellow and bright blue background. Aside from that, the box has a graphic stating that this is the original Metroid, since even Nintendo knew it could be easily confused with Metroid 2 since they use the same exact art. Then there's the message describing the game as it's you against Mother Brain in a thrilling battle, which isn't really accurate to the game considering that her fight is like the last 5 minutes of the game, and the Mother Brain fight is the last thing I think of when I hear the word thrilling. Anyways, because of the fact it just reuses art that doesn't fit the game, it's going in pretty bad. Moving on to the best Metroid game, we have Super Metroid's North American box art, which is a classic. It actually seems to portray Samus's fight with Ridley, which does indeed happen in the game, although it's not in the spacious cavern space the box art depicts, as it actually takes place in the cramped Norfarian ruins filled with lava. Samus appears very similar to how she looked in Metroid 2's box art, only reaffirming how good the design really was. Ridley is now rocking his new redesign that this game gave to him, which is definitely a good thing, because the official art for him before was, not good. Though for some reason he's colored red here, even though in the game he's a purple color. However, in-game he does turn to red when he's at really low health. So maybe Samus is shooting her killing shot at Ridley, and that's why he's screaming in pain or something. Overall, the box art is quite good, until you focus on the top portion of the art and you notice that Kraid's claws and belly are visible for some reason. Why is Kraid up there? How did he get up there? And why is he falling on top of Samus? Because I can assure you, that does not happen in the game. This one weird oddity kinda throws off the box art a bit, and it's what's causing me to place it in decent instead of amazing. Japan knocked it out of the park with this one, because this box art is simply fantastic. It uses a similar looking drawing of Samus as the North American one, and she's once again fighting Ridley, although he is now purple just like he is in the game normally. They are also once again in a massive cavern. However, a lot more of it is visible and shows off a Zebesian and a couple key hunters hiding in the background. But in addition, we have Kraid, shown in all of his glory, towering over everything else with Ridley perched on his knee. This is so fucking cool, and even though Samus never fights both of them in the game at once, who cares? I also love how Samus seems to glow with light, to serve as a contrast to the dark cavernous walls and the evil creatures that live within the darkness. This looks way too amazing to give it anything but amazing. Next up is Fusion's North American art, which is honestly a bit underwhelming. I do really like the Fusion suit in general, and Samus's pose here is really neat looking and quite unique compared to basically any other promotional pose of Samus, as she looks like she's about to take off into a full sprint. However, the main thing holding this one back is the background, as it's bland as hell. The background depicts Samus being on the surface of a planet, which isn't fitting since Fusion takes place on a space station, and they also just slap promotional drawings of the Zebesian, a Hornode, Arachnus, and a zombie researcher just in the background, willy-nilly. Why those 4 enemies? Who knows? It's not a terrible box art, just an average one. Japan once again knocks out of the park with its box art. It shows Samus rocking a confident pose and standing up tall while angling her arm cannon upwards. Pretty much the exact opposite pose that Samus has in the North American box art. In addition, the box art now depicts Samus in the DSL station, where the game actually takes place. There's also various enemies, such as the zombie researchers, a key hunter, and a Genesis enemy, all creeping towards Samus from the background. I also love the destruction and cracks in the walls to further reinforce how much damage the X-Parasites have done to the station. I even like the blue paint-like splotches on the left, as it reminds me of the gelatinous appearance of the X quite a bit. The box art is quite accurate to the game, and is also incredibly visually interesting, earning it a place and amazing. Next up is Metroid Prime's box art, which is really lame, honestly. It's literally just a promotional render of Samus with a Frigate Orpheon background with a logo slapped at the bottom. It's not horrendous or anything, it's just really boring. I mean, I could probably make a better one in Photoshop if I really tried. And it also doesn't do a good job of showing the true awe and wonder that Metroid Prime provided when it first came out. So I'm slapping it in pretty bad. Also to note is the bonus disc edition of the game that included the Metroid Prime 2 bonus disc. And it lets you know this by having a third of the box art depicting Prime 2's Samus render, and some weird ing thing in the background. It makes it marginally more interesting than the normal box art, but not enough to move it up a tier. Japan's Prime 1 box art is thankfully a bit better than the North American one, as it has a lot more going on. It is a significantly more interesting Samus render that casts an orange glow across her that very nicely contrasts the dark blue that makes up most of the background. The background itself, though, is a bit disappointing, as it still doesn't show off the awe and wonder of the game, as all it depicts is an asteroid and planet Talon 4. And even then, you can barely even see the planet. Another thing to note is the overlay of Samus' lock-on graphic on top of her in this art, which makes me think that this is actually the last moments of Samus' life before her head is shot off by like a hitman or something. Lastly, the Japanese box art was actually reused for the Wii release of the game, which is literally identical to the original box art, but now it's surrounded in the white and blue branding of the new Play Control series, which screams at you that this is indeed an enhanced GameCube game, but on your Wii. They look fairly good visually, but they could have done a better job at depicting more of the game's beauty in the background, as it's still a little bit on the bland side of things, which is why they're only going into average. Zero Mission's box art is pretty solid all around. You have Samus swinging her arm cannon in a motion that is honestly very reminiscent of her melee counter move that she'd gain later in the 2D series. She appears to be in the Chozodia area of the game, supported by the presence of Chozo statues in the background, and her very clearly being above ground. Behind her is an explosion that shows a Decigiga and a Scree being blown to absolute bits, with another Decigiga and Zoomer hanging around by the Chozo statues. We also have a cool spectral Ridley at the very top of the box, which is a nice touch. The box art accurately reflects the game, as the explosion almost shows off how Zero Mission is a much more fast-paced and bombastic game compared to its contemporaries. And it's also very visually pleasing. This is another amazing box art. Japan's Zero Mission box art is also quite good, featuring Samus in a crouched pose holding up her arm cannon once again, similar to Metroid 2's Samus art. The border is made up of Chozo architecture, and the red background shows a silhouette of Zero Suit Samus, hinting at the game's new final area. There's also a few Metroids to her right, which is actually one of only 2 times a Metroid has appeared on a Metroid game's box art. You'd think it would happen more, but apparently not. Now, while this box art is visually cool looking, I feel like its more subdued nature doesn't really fit the game as well as the North American box art's more bombastic design, given that Zero Mission is probably the least atmospheric of any of the games, which is why it's only going in decent. Just like the game itself, Prime 2's box art is an absolutely massive improvement over Prime 1's. Samus is leaned back with her arm cannon ready to fire at a second's notice. Similar to Prime 1's Japanese box art, we can see Samus' lock-on reticle on top of her, this time aimed at her arm cannon. I guess the hitman wants to blow off Samus's hand or something now, because the head wasn't enough, just add insult to injury. The right portion of the box art features the right portion of Samus's in-game HUD, which displays the current selected beam and how much light and dark ammo she has. But by far the coolest part of the box art is the background. It's split between light and dark, which is the entire theme of Metroid Prime 2. To the top is the Luminoth, the sentient race of light aether, and to the bottom is the Ing, the dominant species of dark aether. The two sides are fighting for control of the background while Samus stands in the middle, very much reflecting the struggle between the two sides in the actual game. This is an amazing game, so it's only fitting that it has an amazing box art. Prime 2's Japanese box art is also pretty good, as it now depicts Samus standing against a mostly white background, with the far right third being a dark blue color. There is also what I can only describe as futuristic effects being overlaid over Samus. The most visually interesting thing of this box art, however, is Samus herself, as her suit is split down the middle, with the left side being her traditional Varia suit, and the left being the game's dark suit. While this box art looks super cool, I would say it doesn't quite do as good of a job displaying the game's main theme, as the two different suits don't end up being as significant to the game's idea of two opposing forces fighting against each other, as opposed to actually seeing those two forces on the cover like in the North American box art, which is why Japan is only receiving a decent. Like Prime 1, the Japanese box art is also featured on the Wii re-release of the game, which is deemed a new Play Control series, which once again just encases the original art in a white frame. Now, we must move on to the most important game in the entire series, Metroid Prime Pinball! This masterpiece of box art shows us the giant looming figure of Samus, as she inspects the pinball table to make sure it's in working order, although she could just be gawking at it because of how faithfully they transformed the Frigate Orpheon area from Metroid Prime into a pinball table. And if that wasn't awesome enough, there's a rumble pack included! Wow! Jokes aside, this box art isn't exactly the most visually interesting, as it barely shows anything cool on the pinball table. I guess it's accurate to what the game is like, however it doesn't stop it from being a bit boring, landing it in just average. Japan's box art is if like someone turned on the power for the North American box art. Samus is once again looming over the machine, although she's standing towards the right now. The electrical barrier in between the paddles that serves as a power-up in the game itself is now depicted in the box art, which is pretty cool. There are space pirates on a table ready to fire at the morph balls, which is something that can also happen in the game itself, with a few Metroids floating around the table, making it the only other box art in the series to feature actual Metroids on the box art along with Japan's Zero Mission. Although they look kinda awkward in the box art, as they just kinda look like they're above the machine rather than looking like they're an actual part of it. Basically, someone just did a very shitty Photoshop. This oddity keeps this box art from going into amazing, landing it in decent as a result. Fortunately, we must now go over Metroid Prime Hunter's box art, aka the absolute worst Metroid game that is nothing but a shit stain on the entire series, and a game that takes every good aspect of the series and chucks it out the window! However, North American box art's pretty solid. The box art shows Samus once again pointing her gun directly at the consumer, because even she's pissed about how bad this game is. Behind her are the 6 bounty hunters that are trying to halt Samus' progress throughout the game so that they can get their hands on the ultimate power, before Samus can grab it for the Federation. This box art is fairly simple, but it has nice composition, and reflects the main gimmick of the game, earning it a decent. Which pains me, because anything Metroid Prime Hunters related deserves to go in awful. The Japanese box art is a lot more reflective of the game's actual quality, as in it sucks. This box art only has a render of Samus taking up most of the box, and instead of showing any of the other hunters, the name of the game, the background is now just a bright red, with the game's name being spelled out in giant white letters on the red. Because, just in case you didn't know you were playing Metroid Prime Hunters from the logo, the background will definitely beat the game's name into your head. This box art is fucking awful. Before we talk about Metroid Prime 3's box art, we must go over the box arts for the Metroid Prime Hunters demo, known as Metroid Prime Hunters First Hunt. It was originally a packing game for when the DS originally launched in North America and Europe, and the box art is not particularly good. It's literally just Samus's visor with Samus being reflected in her own visor. This box art doesn't even make sense about what the perspective is. How is she reflecting in her own visor? And it also doesn't do a good job at showcasing the contents of the demo. Not only that, but the first hunt graphic is really small, so you have to look a little hard to identify if it's the demo of the main game or not. Europe's is about the same, but the first hunt graphic is greatly enlarged, and the small message on the bottom stating it's a demo on the North American box art has been replaced by the word demo being plastered in large letters above the logo. These small changes do a bit in elevating how the art reflects the game, but it still isn't proven enough to put it in a tier higher. It will just go slightly above the North American one in the pretty bad tier. Prime 3's box art in North America shows Samus back to back with what seems to be a dark reflection of herself, obviously showing the theme of corruption in the game. As in the game itself, Samus is slowly being corrupted by Phazon, and if she becomes fully corrupted, she'll become nothing but a puppet for Dark Samus to control. Speaking of which, Dark Samus can be seen in the background fading in with the space background. Another major detail is that Samus is hovering above a planet of some sorts. At first glance it appears to be phased due to the deep blue color, but as we can see, the bottom left of the planet seems to be slowly covered in some sort of webbing. This indicates that this planet is not phased or any other planet in the game. Many have speculated that this planet is actually Earth, as Earth actually does exist in the Metroid universe, and it even serves as the Galactic Federation's main HQ. This would logically be the Space Pirates' main target after they take over the galaxy with the Phazon. One last thing to note is that this box art looks very similar to the cover art for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, which has the same idea with a dark version of the hero being essentially reflected behind them. Even weirder is that both came out in 2007. Actually, now that I think about it, all the games in the series released the same year. Spider-Man 1, Metroid Prime 1, both in 2002. Metroid Prime 2 and Spider-Man 2, both in 2004. Maybe there's more to this. This can't be just a coincidence, because that would make too much sense. No, there's a secret connection between Metroid and Spider-Man, which instantly means that the true villain of Metroid Prime 4 is Spider-Man, confirmed! Anyways, this box art looks incredibly cool and shows the game's themes well, giving it an amazing. Japan's box art is also very cool looking. While it doesn't show the theme of corruption directly, it does show off plenty of other things about the game that make up for this. Samus is standing front and center with various other characters from the game making up the background. On the left are Rundus, Gandrada, and the Galactic Federation soldier. And on the right is Meta Ridley, Gore, a space pirate, and Dark Samus. This box art shows all the villains of the game, and the 3 bounty hunters that originally were meant to help her on her mission before they were all corrupted by Phazon themselves. Finally, the bottom half of the box art's background is Planet Phase, which is the final area that the game builds up to during its runtime. This is yet another amazing box art. In 2009, the Metroid Prime Trilogy was released in both North America and Europe, because fuck Japan I guess, which included all 3 Metroid Prime games on a single disc. The box art itself is honestly really lame. It shows a grayscale Samus pointing her gun at the player once again. And that's it. The background doesn't include any details from the other games, no other characters appear on it, nope, it's just a spruced up Samus render. It does match the game's menus, but that's the least important part of the game, so it doesn't really matter. This box art is going in pretty bad, as it doesn't reflect the contents of the game well. Other M's box art is honestly pretty damn good. It has a nice watercolor look, and it features Samus in the bottom right corner, with the younger Samus above her and Adam Malkovich to her left. Everybody's favorite character for sure. And the way they are positioned implies that Samus is thinking about them, as she does think about herself and reflects on her life throughout the game's story, to varying degrees of success. Also to the top of the box art is the bottle ship, in which the events of Other M take place. Now this box art would go into amazing because it looks really nice and it accurately reflects the game. But it fails to include the best character in all of Metroid, Anthony Higgs! The shining member of the 7th Platoon who used to be an old buddy of Samus. He's packed with an ice pistol and a super-powered plasma rifle that can destroy just about everything. This man almost died twice and walked away without any trauma. This man straight up insulted Ridley and wasn't even fazed by his presence. Anthony Higgs is the greatest character in all of Metroid, and quite possibly in all of gaming. So it's a crime that he's not featured in the art. Decent it is. Japan, what in the fuck were you smoking when you made this box art? For some reason, the artist decided it would be an amazing idea to give Samus's suit like a comic book filter with all the dots, but then not do it for her visor, so it just looks like a really shitty Photoshop job. Not only that, but whatever the fuck they're trying to go for isn't even close to accurately showing what the game is about. Oh, and let's not forget the background. It's just completely red for some reason. It's actually impressive how bad this box art is. Federation Force is the game that brought Metroid back into the spotlight after 6 long years of waiting after Other M, and is widely considered to be one of, if not the best Metroid game by nearly every single fan. Anyways, its box art is just kinda okay. It shows off the 4 Federation Marines in it, which you and the 3 other people on your team play as Federation Force is a 4-player co-op game. Up top in the space background are the 3 planets that are explored during the course of the game, being Excelsior, Talvania, and beyond. There's nothing outright wrong with this box art, there's just not much going on, making it feel very bland, therefore landing it on average. The European and Japanese box arts are thankfully quite a lot better, as instead of just the 4 Marines just standing there and doing nothing, they are now locked into combat against a group of space pirates in what looks to be some sort of ship. The Red Trooper is fending off pirates to the left of the group, and the Green Trooper is doing the same with the right side. The Yellow Trooper is shooting the pirates coming from the foreground, and the Blue Trooper is standing in a cool stance, using their raw style power to scare off the pirates. This box art is a hell of a lot more interesting than the North American one, and it still does an excellent job showing off what the game is like. But even still, I don't think it's quite cool enough to earn amazing, so it's going in decent. Samus Returns box art may look quite similar to Metroid 2's, as Samus is pulling the exact same pose as she did in that game, in as she's crouched down and aiming her arm cannon up. This is very intentional, as Metroid Samus Returns is actually a remake of Metroid 2. However, while it is nice that it pays homage to the original game, I feel like it doesn't really do anything aside from that. It looks cool visually for sure, as I really love the design of her suit in this game, and how it's more angular and mechanical. And I also like how the game's main planet, SR-388, serves as the bottom half of the background. Aside from that though, this box art does very little to show off what the game is about. There are no Metroids present in the art, which would make sense since Metroid 2 is all about hunting the Metroids to extinction. You also don't get to see the surface of the planet, nor even what the planet really looks like since it's covered in shadows. The original game's box art worked since it showed the planet you explore and showed off its simple yet beautiful landscape, while also establishing the base Samus design that pretty much every game in the series would use as a reference. Samus Returns box art doesn't do either of those things, making it feel a little bit bland honestly, which is why I'm putting it in average. Our final box art is Metroid Dreads, and this box art is awesome. We have Samus front and center with her arm cannon angled up once again, while in a firm and confident stance. And can I just say I fucking love Samus' suit design in Dread. It has a lot of the familiar elements of Samus' traditional suit, while also incorporating elements of her fusion suit. But it still manages to have a very unique flair all to itself. Samus appears to be standing in the room of some sort. Judging by the cold gray metal, it's most likely one of the game's Emmy rooms. Rooms in which Samus must run and hide from the stalking robots, known as the Emmys. Speaking of which, the game's 7 enemies can be seen stalking Samus from above, ready to hunt her down in any second. The blood-red sky is also very fitting given the game's, well, dread-filled tone and dangerous atmosphere. This box art looks badass and matches the game perfectly, earning it an amazing. Well, there we go. We've now looked at every single box art in the Metroid series. Some were really damn good, and some were, not good. My overall favorite is probably Super Metroid's Japanese box art, as it has a grand sense of scale, shows off Ridley and Kraid with great attention to detail, and has loads of other details in the background that show off so many other aspects of the game. Fitting that the best box art goes to the best Metroid game. The game that has the best box arts overall is Metroid Prime 3, as both of its box arts landed amazing. The artists definitely weren't slacking when it came to that game's box art. The worst box art is between Other M's and Hunter's Japanese box arts, but at least Other M's is really funny to look at, whereas Hunter's is just fucking stupid. Plus Hunter's is a shittier game than Other M anyways, so it's quite fitting. Now, obviously my opinion is most certainly going to be different than yours, which is why I'll be posting the link to this tier list template so that you can rank them the way you believe is fit. Feel free to send them over on my Discord server if you so choose to. Anyways, have an excellent day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.